Jamaica's story did not begin as a peaceful meeting of cultures. It began with ships. In the 1600s, the island, then under English control after it was seized from Spain, became part of a brutal colonial system built on sugar. Sugar was wealth. Sugar was power, and to produce it, the British Empire demanded labor at any cost. From West Africa, millions were captured, taken from powerful kingdoms, villages, and families, and forced across the Atlantic in the Middle Passage. They did not come willingly. They were chained, transported in horrific conditions, and sold into slavery upon arrival. Jamaica became one of the central hubs of that system. By the late 17th and 18th centuries, the island was overwhelmingly populated by enslaved Africans forced to work on vast sugar plantations. But the story does not end there. At the same time Ireland was under English rule, political prisoners, rebels, and civilians caught in conflict were deported to the Caribbean. Some Irish arrived as indentured servants, bound by contracts that promised eventual freedom but often delivered harsh, deadly labor conditions. Others were forcibly transported as punishment during wars and uprisings. Many never saw their homeland again. On the plantations of Jamaica, Africans and Irish laborers sometimes worked side by side under the same tropical sun. Their legal statuses were not identical. Enslavement was permanent and racialized in ways indenture was not. But both groups experienced displacement, exploitation, and violence within the colonial plantation system. Over generations, cultures began to intersect. Language blended. African rhythms met European instruments. Spiritual traditions overlapped and adapted. Survival required adaptation, and adaptation created something new. The food, the dialect, the music, and even elements of folklore began to reflect layered histories. The majority of Jamaica's population remained of African descent, because the transatlantic slave trade brought far greater numbers from West Africa than from Ireland. Yet Irish influence persisted, visible in surnames, certain linguistic traces, religious traditions, and historical records of migration and forced transport. The system that brought them there was not unity, it was empire. But history has a way of transforming pain into identity. When slavery was abolished in the 19th century, and later when Jamaica moved toward independence in the 20th century, the island's culture had already been shaped by centuries of collision. West African endurance, European colonial structures, and the lived reality of survival on Caribbean soil. Modern Jamaica is not simply the story of two peoples stranded. It is the story of a colonial machine that uprooted millions, and of the generations who, despite that violence, forged a powerful, globally influential culture. Reggae, patois, cuisine, resistance movements, spirituality, these did not emerge from one origin. They were formed in the crucible of forced migration, labor exploitation, rebellion, faith, and resilience. Jamaica became what it is not because people chose to meet there, but because history forced them into proximity. And from that proximity, through struggle, resistance, and creativity, an entirely new national identity was born.